from a genuine place of love and care. But when we talk about things like the male loneliness epidemic and male suicide rates, one of the biggest things that comes to my mind is, why are men in general not working to decenter women in the same way that women are working to decenter men? When women are talking about decentering men in our lives, we're talking about not seeking approval from men, not doing things to appease men and society and the patriarchy at large. So that means if you want to follow a traditional route, like, have kids, get married, all that kind of stuff, you need to figure out why you want to do those things for you, not for someone else and not for society, and not get your sense of self-worth from the way that men respond to you. And I feel like men really need to do the same thing, because why is the suggested answer to the male loneliness epidemic women? Why isn't it men finding more fulfillment in their day-to-day lives? Why isn't it men finding ways to improve their male-to-male friendships? Why isn't it finding ways that men can, have hobbies and interests that are not just sports, or if it is sports, making those more like deep and meaningful and, breeding genuine connection with other people? Why is it that when talking about male suicide rates, we're not talking about the way that the patriarchy is destructive, the way that the focus on making money and that being the only way to have a sense of self-worth is so damaging to a lot of young men? Why is it always put onto women? And now, even online and in person, we still hear men talking about wanting to be like a provider and a protector, and that's the reason why they want to have a wife and children and things like that. And although that sounds nice, actually, what would you do if that just wasn't possible? What would you do if you never met the right person? What would you do if you just couldn't have children? What would you do if you were just thrown into a very different situation? Where would you find your happiness? What is it that would make you feel like a provider and a protector? And what does that even mean? What kind of sense of self-worth are you getting from those labels? And could you get those from something else?
I often ask myself the same thing. And then I remember that society rewards men for being men, not women. It benefits them. Anything that benefits you suits you. And I feel like sometimes I'm not a man. I'm not going to speak from the lenses of a man. I'm just going to speak from the lenses of a woman. Okay? And obviously, as you guys should know by now, I'm going to attach a video of a man who breaks down this perfectly. But I watched a movie, a Nigerian movie, Soul on Fire. But I believe it's called Another Wife. It features Ola Jacobs and Patience. I can't say her name. And other actors as well. And I recommend that movie. It fits so well with this conversation. I loved that movie growing up as a child. And now viewing it, I realize how society made those two people who love each other dependent on each other. Especially the woman. Because when Patience, Azuka, because the character she's playing is Azuka, eventually brought another woman in her house, and this woman started threatening to take her position, which is younger, obviously, still beautiful, still has the ability to nurture a child. Mind you, she brought this woman in because she knew her, right? And then she was busy familiarizing herself with her. And then eventually he did the same for her husband, so that her husband can get used to her. But this woman wanted her position as a wife. And then I saw her that everything she's ever known, everything she's ever been, in the last 30 years she's been with this man, it has always dedicated to being his wife. She doesn't know how to live outside him. She doesn't know how to be without him. In fact, I feel like she ostracized basically everybody else. She didn't have everybody. Her parents passed away. That she had to tolerate what she had to tolerate because she had nowhere to go. And then she became a drunkard. I know I'm spoiling you, but it will be much interesting if you guys go watch that movie. And then the new wife, ganged up with her husband because, again, even though he didn't want another woman to give him a child, he was okay with it. He was convinced. And then being convinced as well meant that this woman saw as a threat. And then she had to go out, and eventually she was thrown out. But ultimately, this man realizes, I'm skipping a lot of parts by the way, realizes that the only woman who can tolerate his manhood, the only woman who can tolerate him and how he wants marriage, he even says it, is Azuka, not this young woman. She doesn't know how to cook, she doesn't know how to cater to him. Outside of sex, there was nothing. And she started using that very same sex to threaten him. After a while, it became boring. It wasn't no longer exciting for her to even utilize it as a tool. She was weaponizing it way too much, to a point that he started getting bored because she was lacking on other aspects that made marriage sacred. And with Azuka, he got the full package, because Azuka tolerated. She experienced DV. I mean, it's a lot. It fits so well with this thing of her in the end as well had to forgive him, despite everything she's been through with this man. She ultimately got pregnant, by the way, at 50 something. There's an old couple, by the way. But that's exactly what it is, and I feel like marriage has made us that way. Sad, especially for women. But anyways, let me know your thoughts.
It's actually interesting, but the answer is pretty simple. It's because we don't need to. Most of us have never actually centered women in the first place. Even the men, right, who do nothing but chase women, who are bums except for living, dying, and breathing for women. They've never centered women a day in their life. They are centering themselves, their lust, their ego, their love of the chase, and the reward of getting the girl. The ego boost and the pride of being a guy who gets girls. That's what they center themselves, right? And you can also see this more generally, right? There is a big conversation for men about controlling lust. It's not decentering women, it's we need to control our lust, control ourselves. So even when it sounds like it's about women, it's really about us, our own impulses, our own discipline. But woman isn't centered. She's either the test on one side or the trophy on the other side. And it's a fact. A lot of men believe if they become a man of value, they'll get the girl they want. So in that sense, the woman becomes the proof of value. She's not the purpose or the goal. She's simply the proof. The girl is a confirmation that you are a real man. So yes, we center ourselves, but it's not freely. We center ourselves through the prison of masculinity. Just like women are conditioned to serve men, we're conditioned to serve the concept of being a man. Whether that's being a provider, being a protector, being dominant, respected. The list goes on and on. We all know what it is, right? And men and women reinforce this concept. We will say, if we don't like something a man did, oh, he's just a boy, he's not a man. A real man does this. A real man never does that. That's the script, right? And we've built society around that. The problem right now is, as society changes, those masculine roles, they get harder and harder to live out. Women have more freedom, more autonomy, more choice. And suddenly, right, a lot of men, a lot of us, we don't have the ability to live up to the old stereotypes. The average man now, he can't provide anymore. Women are getting educated at higher rates than most men. Women under 30 are buying properties at a higher rate than most men. So we don't know what makes us men anymore. If she provides for herself, where does that leave our role? If she leads, is that a threat to our authority? If she's self-sufficient, then how do we provide? Is that not emasculating? And that's where you see the insecurity creeping. That's why our sense of self can collapse so fast. Not because she emasculated us, but because our masculinity was conditional. And now we can't meet those conditions anymore. And that's when masculinity turns fragile, right? We cling to control, to dominance, to hierarchy, because we're scared to lose our role. And this is what no one wants to admit. Most of us don't want to reinvent ourselves. We don't want infinite choice. What we want is orientation. We need a clear path, a clear role, a clear reason to be. And that's why we see men grasp into tribalism, ideology, nostalgia, the red pill, religion, because freedom, true freedom is a burden, right? It creates anxiety. If everything's a choice, then nothing is given. You're not a man because you fight. You're not a man because you work or provide or marry or you're strong or any other rite of passage. You're a man because you say so. But what if you don't know what to say? And that's the biggest problem right now. So no, men don't need to decenter women. What we need to do is decenter ourselves. Decenter the self as man, the identity we were handed, right? And we need to rebuild it with purpose. Not what makes us look like men, but what makes us feel like ourselves. It's a hard concept to grasp, but decenter the self. Anyway, it's just my opinion, I may be wrong.